Welcome back to 209 Prep Sports. Chris Herrera back in the studio, flying solo again this week. Scott's out of town for work. So we're going to go through the scores, and then we'll have a guest on a little bit later to talk a little more TVL football. So let's go ahead and start off with last week's games. Thursday night saw Buick Colony going down to Downey, or up to Downey, I guess. Looked like a pretty entertaining game. Downey putting 41 on the board, scoring pretty much at will early, and Buick coming back later on in the game. Some statistics that are somewhat notable. Connor Stoddard was 9 for 27 for 139 yards and 4 touchdowns. And then Hayden Grant had 8 carries for 106 yards and a touchdown, rushing for Downey. Passing for Buick Colony, you had Hendrickson was 8 for 11 for 64 and a pick. Their leading rusher was Peyton Johnson. He had 16 carries for 117 yards and a touchdown. No huge numbers receiving, but the leading receiver for the game was Camden Rush. He had 2 catches for 96 yards and a touchdown. I think it's worth noting again, we have a lot of scores posted on Max Preps, but not a lot of box scores. So it's very difficult to go through this and make sure that we're getting, proper coverage to people out there, make sure they're getting their due. And this is one of those games that we'll talk about. So East Union goes to Oakdale. Oakdale does not post statistics. I don't know if that's something that just don't do or what have you, but East Union does. Luke Weaver, who's been the prep athlete of the week, he was 20 for 35 for 170 and a pick. Their leading rusher was also Luke Weaver. He had 18 carries for 65 yards and a touchdown, and Jonte Maggard added 5 carries for 42 yards and a touchdown. Leading the receiving was Dylan Lee. He had 3 catches for 84 yards. So again, looked like a very entertaining game. I'm sure the statistics on the Oakdale side, how they posted them, would be pretty impressive with a 59-point output this week. So pretty impressive game for Oakdale to go to East Union, just kind of getting themselves set up for this week with the Kimball matchup. So moving right along, you had Sonora going to West. Sonora putting it on West pretty good, 49-0. No statistics in that game posted at all for either side. Moving right along, Lodi goes to Encinal. Looks like they're from Alameda. Lodi prevails 49-28. As far as statistics go, Lodi entered no statistics, so we won't go through Encinal's statistics since they're out of Alameda. The next game we'll cover, this was the game we talked about quite a bit last week. Escalon traveling to Houston, really tough game. I know that Houston was up early. I think it was 13-0. Escalon battled their way back into this game before coming away with a 21-13 victory. Donovan Rosevink was 9 for 13 for 66 yards and a touchdown. The leading rusher was J.P. Lyle with 12 carries, 56 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And Logan Anderson added 8 carries for 29 yards. The leading receiver for the day, receptions-wise, was Owen Nash. He had 6 catches for 36 yards, and E.J. Lewis added 2 catches for 32 yards and a touchdown. No statistics added for Houston, but for everything that I read, everything that I saw online, looked like this game was very, very tightly contested. And Escalon, like I said, having to come back and put up some scores in the second half to make sure they got this, walked away with this win. So moving right along, we have Somerville going to Big Valley Christian. Somerville puts 42 on the board, outscoring Big Valley Christian 42-7. The next game that we'll cover for our area would be the Ripon Modesto Christian game. Ripon goes to Modesto Christian, scores 14 in the first, 14 in the second, 21 in the third, and 7 in the fourth, outscoring and winning this game 56-12. Ripon has not entered any stats for this game either. Again, very difficult to have a show when you're so heavily reliant on the statistics or the reporting from each school. The next game, Enox goes to Bear Creek. Enox leaves that game with it being a 57-7 winner. Edison plays Pittman. I'm going to go through the Edison box score. I'm not so sure that these are accurate. Edison scored 55 points. They win this game 55-6. The leading rusher was Blackshear, had 49 yards with 2 touchdowns. Dostie had two carries for 43 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Tyree Owens had 1 carry for 5 yards and a touchdown. The leading receiver for the game, as these statistics show, is Tyree Owens was 2 for 48. And then Sebron Jr. had 3 catches for 27 yards. There were no passing yards added for this game, and Pittman added no stats to the game. So looks like the offensive juggernaut at Edison did pretty well this weekend, walking away with a 55-6 win. The next game we'll cover, Franklin goes up to Argonaut. Franklin taking their newfound success up to Argonaut, seeing a little bit different version of football up there, and Argonaut has their way with Franklin, winning 48-0. Franklin did not enter any stats, but Argonaut did. Bo Davis was 4 for 7 for 101 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. The rushing is a rush by committee with Argonaut week in and week out. We see this. They had 8 guys get the ball. The leading rusher was Caleb McElfish. He had 7 carries for 70 yards and 4 touchdowns. Josiah Sanders had 6 carries for 72 yards and a touchdown. Braden Welch 1 carry for 4 yards and a touchdown, and Mateo Flores had 6 carries for 95 yards and a touchdown. So the running back committee seems to be working. Colby Eckhart was the leading receiver with 3 catches for 96 yards. And again, there were no statistics posted by Franklin. So pretty successful night for Argonaut with the revamped Franklin team. So pretty good return for Argonaut in that game. So moving right along, Ripon Christian went to Riverbank to play. Ripon Christian leaves this game a 53-0 victor. Both teams posted some statistics, so we'll go through it. Trey Fasani, the quarterback for Ripon Christian, was 10 for 15 for 189 and 2 touchdowns. The leading rusher for the game was Grant Sonke. He had 6 carries for 81 yards and 2 touchdowns. Mike DeYoung had 6 carries. Had 6 carries for 73 yards and a touchdown. Ethan McGovern had 4 carries for 71 yards and a touchdown. And Brady Grons added 1 carry for 29 yards and a touchdown. Leading receiver was Brady Grons, 4 catches, 67 yards. Micah DeYoung had 2 carries for 48 yards, or 2 receptions for 48 yards and a touchdown. And Grant Sonke also added a 1 catch for 81 yards and a touchdown. On the Riverbank side of the ball, Armando Guzman was 3 for 6 for 14 yards passing. Anthony Leon was 3 for 9 for 20 yards passing. The leading rusher for the game for Riverbank was Anthony Leon. He had 10 carries for 18 yards, and then Alex Nisperos had 16 carries for 5 yards. Receiving was Stanley Tran, had 3 catches for 20 yards, and Richard Torres had 2 for 12. So Ripon Christian's a very difficult team. Riverbank's working their way back into the picture, trying to get put some success on the field. Which I have no doubt in my mind at some time that will happen. So moving right along, Manteca goes to Sierra. Not even close in this game. Manteca wins 65-0. This game was over early. Our old friends with Manteca, having their way that day. So Colton Stoneham, he was 2 for 2 for 27 yards. Garrison Reese was 2 for 5 for 66 yards and a touchdown. The leading rusher is our old friend Blake Nicholson, 6 carries for 187 yards and 4 touchdowns. And the Lion Cologne added 8 carries for 143 yards and 3 touchdowns. So pretty good output by both of those guys. And then Gutierrez also added 9 carries for 41 yards and a touchdown. Leading receiver for Manteca was Blake Gross had 2 catches for 27 yards, and then Zion Allen added 1 catch for 36 yards and a touchdown. No statistics added for Sierra. This game, like I said, was out of control. Manteca prevailing 65-0. The next game we'll talk about on the slate is the Weston Ranch Kimball game. Kimball puts this one away early also. Even though Weston Ranch scored early in the first quarter, they scored their 6 points. So Kimball ends up winning this game 54-6. They scored 14 in the first, 14 in the second, 13 in the third, 13 in the fourth quarter. For Weston Ranch, statistically, Brown Sanger was 2 for 6 for 40 yards, a touchdown and a pick. The leading rusher for Weston Ranch was Deontay Levon. He had 10 carries for 44 yards, and Brown Sanger added 7 carries for 37 yards. The leading receiver for the game was Nelson Phillips. He had 1 catch for 30 yards, and Deontay Levon had 2 catches for 5 yards, but he added a touchdown there. Getting into the offensive juggernaut that is Kimball, Nick Coronado was 15 for 17 for 343 yards, 5 touchdowns with a 167.3 quarterback rating. Rushing the ball, Sebastian Tate was 11 for 88 with 2 touchdowns. The leading receiver, Willie Clifton, 6 catches, 130 yards, 3 touchdowns. Mason Rivera added 2 catches for 77 yards and a touchdown, and Travis Marrero added 3 catches for 88 yards and a touchdown. Another really good game. I don't know that Livingston's getting the respect that they probably should be getting at this point, but Livingston goes to Hillmar and goes into halftime up 17-14. Hillmar has to make a late charge. I think that they were down 2 scores going into the fourth quarter, or right in somewhere in the fourth quarter, and they scored 2 touchdowns late in the game to win this game 28-24. Livingston statistically, Batista was 8 for 20 for 57 yards, a touchdown and a pick. Rushing the ball, he also had 13 carries for 131 yards and a touchdown. And then Carlos Baez added 24 carries for 159 yards and a touchdown. Leading receiver was Jordan Alvarez. He had 5 catches for 71 yards. And then Israel Padilla added 1 catch for 6 yards and a touchdown. On the Hillmar side of the ball, Cameron Moak was 7 for 12 passing for 227 yards, 3 touchdowns and a pick. The leading rusher was Luis Vargas. He was 8 for 128 with a touchdown. Leading receiver was Derek Taylor, had 3 catches for 102 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Cannon Ireland added 2 catches for 88 yards and a touchdown. So again, very well played game. Everything I read about this game throughout the night was very impressive. It was good to see Livingston start to put it together again. They should have a lot of success moving forward as they continue to grow. One of the small school darlings at this year has been Waterford. Waterford takes their undefeated record to Delhi, leaving Delhi with a 34-0 victory. Aaron Adams was the leading passer for Waterford. He was 17 for 23 with 4 touchdowns, no picks. The leading rusher was Ryan Hilton. He had 16 carries for 142 yards and a touchdown. The leading receiver was Javier Newsom, had 6 catches for 114 yards and 3 touchdowns. Brinkman also added 2 catches for 32 yards and a touchdown. So, and Delhi did not add stats. So pretty good offensive day for Waterford. Looks like their defense stood up and held strong as well. So they will leave Delhi with a 34-0 victory. Getting into the next game, Stag goes to Modesto, leaves that game 42-7 victor. The leading passer for Stag was Angel Gonzalez. He was 14 for 34 for 222 yards, had 3 touchdowns and 2 picks. And then Andrew Johnson came in and had was 2 for 3 for 55 yards and a touchdown. The leading rusher on the day for Stag was Willie Turner. He had 12 carries for 87 yards and a touchdown. The leading receiver was Thomas Gray. He had 4 catches for 95 yards, 2 touchdowns. Corbett Freeman added 3 catches for 76 yards and a touchdown, as well as Lockhart III added 1 catch for 8 yards and a touchdown, and Modesto did not enter stats. So Stag keeps themselves relevant in this game, winning 42-7. Moving right along, Kennedy comes to Stockton to play McNair. McNair wins this game 40-6. Neither team posted any stats for the game, so there's nothing really to talk about other than Stag putting 40 points on Kennedy. The next game that we'll cover, Tokay goes up the road just a little bit to Liberty Ranch. Liberty Ranch wins this game 38-14. The leading passer for actually Liberty Ranch had one pass for no yards, and he was 0 for 1 with no yards. Logan McCreary added 3 carries for 57 yards and a touchdown. Arthur Drager, probably the will end up being the player of the week, has 21 carries for 245 yards and 4 touchdowns. On the Tokay side of the ball, Brandon Moreno, I read it this week in Twitter that he set the Tokay record for, I think it was completions in a game. He was 25 for 41 for 237 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 picks. The leading rusher was Barrett Crosby, had 14 carries for 61 yards. And then the leading receiver for Tokay was Isaac Delgado, who had 11 catches for 86 yards. Andrew Malgoza had 5 catches for 63 yards and a touchdown. And Marcus Morellis added 1 catch for 9 yards and a touchdown. So Liberty Ranch wins this game 38-14. The next game we'll cover, Tracy goes to Vacaville. Does not go well for Tracy. Vacaville prevails 49-9. Statistically for Tracy, they split the quarterback position. Ross Escobar was 2 for 4 for 4 yards. And Drew Frederick was 2 for 5 for 52 yards and 2 picks. The leading rusher for Tracy was Austin Hoysey, was 20 for 71. D. Thomas Jr. had 7 carries for 83 yards and a touchdown, and Ross Escobar added 7 carries for 71 yards, no touchdowns. Leading receiver, yards wise, was Curtis Maynor. He had 1 catch for 41 yards, and then Austin Hoysey was 2 for 4 for 4 yards. Vacaville's not in our section, so no need to cover their statistics. Tracy loses this game 49-9. The next game we'll cover, St. Mary's goes over to Oakland. I watched this game live and in person. They went over to Oakland to play Bishop O'Dowd. St. Mary's prevails 42-6. It was not really that close as far as the score goes. St. Mary's had their way running the ball throughout the day. The leading passers for St. Mary's was Cruz Herrera, was 9 for 18 for 163 yards, a touchdown, no picks, with 100 quarterback rating. The leading rusher for St. Mary's was Asante Carter. He had 16 carries for 128 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jaden Marshall also added 8 carries for 53 yards and 2 touchdowns. And the leading receiver for the day, receptions-wise, Jason Calvin had 4 catches for 77 yards, and Nas Danielson had 2 catches for 43 yards and a touchdown. Pretty balanced attack for St. Mary's. Nobody put up the gaudy numbers like St. Mary's has been known to do, but they dominated this game. They were the much better team, and it showed. Like I said, the score was not near what the actual performance on the field was. So the last game that we'll cover in our section for this week, Lincoln goes to Monterey Trail. Lincoln didn't post any stats, but Lincoln wins this game 38-35. Monterey Trail is a relatively new school, but had a ton of success very recently. They've played just about anybody and everybody. They played De La Salle, Lincoln, you name them, they've played them. They are 0-4, but they're probably the best 0-4 team in California, if not the country. So very good win for Lincoln. I believe I saw Jonah Coleman had a really good day, as well as Kenyon Nelson. So if we could get some of these coaches and or ADs or somebody on the team to start entering stats, and make it a lot easier to cover these games and give these kids the credit that they're due. Before we get into this week's matchups, we're going to go ahead and name the 2 nominees for Player of the Week. Asante Carter had 16 carries for 128 yards with 2 touchdowns. But the winner of this week's Player of the Week and the $20 gift card is Arthur Drager. He had 21 carries for 245 yards and 4 touchdowns for Liberty Ranch in that Tokay matchup. So very good game for Arthur, and congratulations on winning the Player of the Week. One other game that we need to cover, probably the only time this has happened in forever. Neither team entered any statistics, but Gustine goes to Mariposa County on Sunday and plays this game. Gustine loses this game 20-36. Again, no statistics to speak of. I thought that more than anything, just to mention that it was actually played on a Sunday was pretty neat. So a little different. We're having to deal with a lot of adversity this season. A lot of things are changing. Almost on a daily or hourly basis, things come up and adjustments are having to be made. This week, some of the matchups to discuss. Edison looks like they don't have a game set up for this week. Chavez wasn't able to field the team. Liberty Ranch plays Rio Linda. Sierra goes to East Union. Just down the road, up the street, I guess. East Union looking to get back to their winning ways. You have Somerville going down to Stone Ridge Christian. Hillmar and Ripon play each other this week. Should be a really good game. Hillmar Ripon is always a good matchup. Both two of the perennial contenders in the TVL. I'm sure that we'll talk a little bit more about that in our interview here in just a few minutes. Central Valley goes to Buick Colony. Linden's game gets changed this week. So Linden was supposed to play Rio Vista, but now they play Vacaville Christian. Vacaville Christian come into Linden. Vacaville Christian brings a 4-0 record to take on Linden, who's 2-2 this season. Mountain House goes to Johansson to play this week. Oakdale Kimball. So probably the game of the week this week would, in most people's mind, would be the Oakdale Kimball game. Oakdale bringing their modified wing tee with passing attack attached to it, and their 4-0 record to Kimball against the air raid offense, slinging it 45, 50 times a game. Nick Coronado and his buddies with Mason Rivera and Willie Clifton. So it should be a really good game. High scoring expected. See whose defense can stand up and fight this. It's going to be on turf, so the speed of Kimball will be definitely something to be noticed. This game's a 7:00 game tomorrow night. Galt travels to Amador. Both teams 0-4, looking for their first win. Galt's a very good 0-4 team. I have not seen Amador yet, so that game should be interesting. Laguna Creek travels to Tracy. Modesto Christian at Riverbank. Both teams trying to get in the win column this week. Mendota goes to Argonaut. Another interesting game this week. Cardinal Newman over from the Santa Rosa area coming to play St. Mary's tomorrow night. Cardinal Newman's 3-1. St. Mary's on a two-game win streak. Should be a very good game. Cardinal Newman's always tough. One of the higher ranked teams before St. Mary's gets into their TCAL play. TVL game to speak of. Should be a good game. Both teams suffered tough losses last week. Houston goes to Livingston. Houston 4-1, going down to Livingston, who's 3-2. Again, Livingston gave Hillmar all they could handle, and Houston and Escalon battled it out. So hopefully both teams are healthy, and they'll be able to go into this game and compete at a high level. The next game could be one of the biggest offensive outputs for the week. You have Lincoln going to Downey. Lincoln taking all their athletes down to Downey, who's been a typical high scoring team in the last couple of years. So that should be an interesting game for the fans. Get to watch a lot of great athletes playing at the highest level. So should be an interesting game there. Oristimba goes to Ripon Christian. Ripon Christian looks to continue their winning ways. Oristimba's always a tough matchup for anybody. They're, little blue collar, getting after it type of team. Waterford puts their 4-0 record on the line against LeGrand at home. Stag plays McNair at McNair. Stag 2-2. McNair's 1-3. Denair plays Gustine. Edison, I believe, still looking for a game. Doesn't have a game yet. Bear Creek and Franklin play each other. Bear Creek's 0-5. Franklin looking to get back in the win column with their 3-2 record. Lodi looks to be playing Grigori this weekend, so that should be a pretty interesting game. On Saturday, no real games in our area to speak of. They're mostly in the Sacramento area. I guess if we had one the couple to talk about, it'd be Millennium playing Encina Prep, and then Valley Christian at Delta Charter. So that's the rundown and for the games this week. Again, it's been very difficult to cover these games in earnest. I mean, we're trying our best today. We'll do our best to keep doing the things that we do, and with the information that we're provided. I won't be able to get any games this weekend as we play tomorrow night. But before we leave, let's go ahead and get into this interview with Frost. So here we go. Hello. We're on with Coach Frost from Escalon. Coach is very knowledgeable in the TVL. He's been on the show before, friend of the show. Appreciate your time. How's it going today?
Oh, man, beautiful day. You can tell fall is approaching. The temperature's dropping a little bit, and that just means football weather, man. I love it. It's the best time of year.
About time, huh? This heat has been kicking our butt.
Yeah, I think when you start the summer and you get going through those off-season workouts and stuff, you like it. But as the season gets going, you kind of want it to start winding down a little bit. And especially around here in California, we definitely could use that rain. So.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Well, let's. I know we're both kind of busy, but let's just go ahead and start with your guys' game last week. I saw, and I was at my son's game in Oakland. They were playing Bishop O'Dowd, so I was over there, kind of following the game along. You guys were in a little trouble first half. Kind of break it down for us.
Oh man, well, first off, you got to give all the credit to Houston. That first half, Coach King, he had that play. Man, that stadium was rocking. The band was rocking. They have some great fans. That town loves football. It's kind of like Escalon. They love football. So it's good that, football is back and really rolling in Houston. Anything and everything, we could sit here like the paper said and, this went wrong for Escalon or that went wrong. But, they had a beautiful game plan. I kind of joked with Coach Hoover, Jesus Christ couldn't have came down from heaven and called a better first half than Coach King did, because, really, they took the momentum. They used that Will Nutcher kid, and they were just getting 3 yards, 4 yards. They got the ball to start the game, and Escalon didn't get the ball until, I think, 3 minutes left in the first quarter.
Jeez.
So they had about a 8-minute drive. Then they punched it in. Nutcher punched it in. 7-0. Cougars get the ball back. 3 and out. Punt it away. Houston takes it. Goes on another drive. Next thing you know, it's 13-0. And it's quiet. It's I don't want to say crickets on our sideline, but it's nerves, man. It's like, man, we've been in those battles, but we don't have too many of those kids that, from that state title team. There's E.J. Lewis, couple kids, Logan Anderson. But the rest of them, this is their first real battle. Their first time, forced in the corner. You got to fight your way out.
Yeah.
And, one of the most beautiful things I told Andy at halftime, he laid into him. Andy he's a people's coach. He's a player's coach. He shows a lot of love, man. He's really a great dude, but he's not really going to chew your ass. He's going to let you learn from your mistakes. And there was no time to learn at halftime. He started chewing into him a little bit, and he started calling out some of those seniors. And, he told them, prove me wrong. And second half, it was just a tale of two halves. Second half, Escalon kind of showed up, started tackling a little bit. I think that Nutcher kid had 90 yards and a touchdown in the first half. If I'm not mistaken, the second half, he only had 7 yards rushing in the third and fourth quarter. The second half, Houston kind of sat back in a 2 safety, 2 high, and they weren't going to let us beat them through the air. So we just started running it up the middle, 3 yards, 4 yards, 5 yards, and you could slowly see that momentum building. We punched that one in the end zone. Next thing you know, it's 13-7. We tell the defense, one stop, guys, one stop. We make the stop, go down the field. By the end of the third quarter, it was 14-13 Escalon, and you could tell that the momentum had really shifted. And I don't know. You got to give a lot of credit to the Escalon kids in the second half, to the defense, Coach Hoover's defense, stepping up, tackling. I don't know. We kind of just we took what they gave us.
Well, and I think it's important too. You guys had a really tough game the week before. Kimball, their air raid circus that they throw out there, and with all their dudes, and Nick Coronado can spread it around. So I'm sure, coming off that loss and then having a tough first half, it's that's probably brought out the mean in coach.
Yeah, I mean we didn't really know who we were yet, but you look back on it, as a coach, you don't want to lose games. But you look back on it, maybe it could be the best thing that happened to us, getting smashed by Kimball there.
Yeah.
I mean, Kimball's the real deal. Don't get me wrong. That team, I mean, they're going to contend for the VOL title, and that's saying a lot because Oakdale, Manteca, Central Catholic, I mean, that's the league to watch this year. Now, no hate on the TVL, but, I mean, being a realist, the VOL would smash most of these TVL teams this year. But
oh, yeah.
On the flip side, I think that makes the TVL a little more competitive because there's not that one dominant team, right?
Yep.
And you saw Livingston go into Hillmar. You saw Houston Escalon. You saw these close scores. And I think week one is just going to be like the telltale sign of this whole season. Every week there's going to be a big battle, a meaningful battle. And, we're lucky to walk away 1-0 from Houston. That's a hell of a team. Coach King is going to have that team in the playoffs, no doubt. I got nothing but respect for those guys. They're building that program the right way. And, they took us to the wall. They had us. And, we just been battle tested in a few spots. And, I think it paid off on our end and it hurt them in their end.
I was, to be honest, I was shocked at the score at halftime, just being shut out more than anything. But I kind of figured that, it was going to be a run-heavy game, that old TVL smash you in the mouth. We're going to punch you in the mouth, punch us back type of thing. I think the game for me that was a little bit shocking, and maybe because, I think Livingston kind of slides under the radar, was the Hillmar game.
We talked about Livingston a few weeks ago. Rockland Bautista is the most experienced quarterback in the league. And when you're playing small school football like that, and you got a quarterback that's a leader and knows how to get teams up for a game and knows how to go out there and execute, there's some statistics on that game too. I mean, that was a wild first half. Real quick to touch back on the Escalon game, though, you were talking about 13-0 at halftime. Here's a wild stat from that game. Escalon only ran 8 total plays in the first half. 8 offensive plays, a 4 and out and 3 plays and a punt. The whole first half. I mean, Houston, they were feeding off that momentum. They were feeding off that crowd, and they had it, man. And they're going to catch somebody like that. They're going to catch Ripon, or they're going to catch Hillmar. They're going to catch somebody down the road here. They got a trap game this week. They're down at Livingston. So both those teams are 0-1, should both be probably 1-0. And the loser is going to be 0-2 and probably on the road for the whole playoffs. I think both those teams are playoff teams.
Oh, yeah.
But if you go 0-2 to start league, I mean, you're probably going to be on the road come postseason.
Well, and Ripon, this looks like they've kind of righted the ship too. So that's going to be another, the 5th team to throw into the loop in that TVL. Who knows what's going to happen? It's going to be a dogfight.
Right. Yeah, I got and looking at the Hillmar Livingston stats. I mean, you talk about Escalon and Houston, it was 13-0 at halftime. Livingston was up 24-14 at halftime.
Yeah.
So I believe it was Hillmar's homecoming. I'm talking to Coach Santos. He tells me if they don't have guys like Brock Perry and Blake Westmoreland, some of those senior leaders, he doesn't think Hillmar walks out of that game,
Yeah.
I mean, Escalon was fortunate to have E.J. Lewis, guys like Logan Anderson, guys that, can step up. Riker Peters was the player of the game for Escalon, guys that needed to step up in the second half stepped up. And you heard the same thing kind of going for Hillmar, that Brock Perry and Westmoreland. I mean, those are some tough dudes. The linebacker right there at, he'll be an all-leaguer, Westmoreland. And, you look at Hillmar, they went to the ground that night. Vargas, 8 carries, 128 yards. Derek Taylor catches the game-winning touchdown. That's that 6'6" kid. He's going to make plays. But Livingston had him where they wanted him. Rockland Bautista, he ran for 131 yards. He threw for 80 yards, 1 rushing touchdown, 1 passing touchdown, 1 pick. It said Livingston hits a fake punt in the first half for 50 yards. So, I mean, they had the momentum. They had the plays going their way. Sometimes you need the ball to bounce your way. You know that as a coach.
Yep.
And, Hilmar's been battle-tested. Ascalon's been battle-tested. They found their way out of it in the second half.
Well, and that's the tough thing, when and we've seen it, we saw it a couple of years ago when Houston came to our yard, having a pretty good year, and they just laid the wood to us. And, I think it's that, I think it is that resiliency and that battle tested mentality that you guys, that your programs have had, because, you've been there, done that. I think that, we talk about that Kimball game. It's more of an anomaly for you guys, but this Hilmar game being down, and I think they were down late in the third quarter by a score or two, maybe. So
it was start of the fourth quarter. It was 24-14.
Yeah,
they scored two. They unanswered two in the fourth there. And and I talked to Coach Santos about it on the real. I think tackling around the league is down a little bit this year.
Yeah.
I don't think there's that one defense that's going to go out there and dominate you like there was in years past.
Yeah.
And whoever shows up and tackles is going to win this league.
Yep.
Whatever team shows up and starts wrapping up and making tackles. I mean, Escalon was in trouble, and they started tackling in the second half, changed the game.
Yeah.
Coach Santos, he'll tell you that fourth quarter, second half, they don't let Livingston score. They start tackling. They tighten up the defense. The whole game changes, So that's going to be the factor, I believe, in the TVL this year, is what team is going to be able to tackle. And that's why Sonora has actually had a little bit of success against these TVL teams. As we were talking about, that Sonora team could tackle. Those guys weren't scared to tackle. They weren't scared to step in there and tackle. And it's just, I think the playoffs is going to be interesting. Seeds are going to be very important. And we were talking about this week. You got a couple games. You got Hilmar at Ripon, you would think would be the TVL game of the week, but I don't think it is. I think Houston at Livingston is the TVL game of the week. That's no disrespect to Hilmar and Ripon, but whoever goes 0-2 out of that Houston-Livingston game, they're going to be fighting for their lives every week from here on out. So,
yep, I see that the exact same way you do. I said the same thing earlier when we were doing the preview. I just think that might be the game of the week in the area. I mean, St. Mary's got they got Cardinal Newman coming to town, so that's going to be a hell of a game. But I think that small school on the small schools, and then the Oakdale Kimball game, I mean, it's going to be legit. I mean, if I could go to one game this week, it'd be that one.
I think I got nothing but love for Oakdale, but I think that Kimball team, and they're getting a lot of respect. Coronado, he's got those ridiculous stats. Hey, that Kimball team though in space it's hard to tackle those guys in space.
Yeah.
We have one or two athletes. They had 10.
Yeah.
It was just a difficult matchup. And I hate to say it as a coach, but I'm kind of glad they kicked our teeth in. It was our homecoming. I mean, shit, that's the last thing we wanted to do was get blown out like that. But maybe that was the slap in the face we needed to wake up to get this league thing rolling.
And I think my perspective outside looking in, I think, a lot of the TVL teams and somewhat the VOL teams are so run heavy that when you see and we had some success with you against you guys, even though I think you're a much better team than us. But I think that, we had some success throwing the ball, and putting, like you said, we have a couple of athletes. I mean, we're not great, and we got, 2 sub-5 guys, but, you run, Kimball's got probably 4, 5, 6 guys that run 4-6, 4-7 type stuff, and that's just different, especially playing a smaller school and, a school that's not accustomed to seeing, 5 guys out in routes every single play.
Exactly. I mean, it's all you got to do is run a slant, run a bubble, run something, get them the ball in space. And like we just talked about, if you can't tackle, you're in trouble. If you can't break down in space, you're in trouble. And we got exposed. We came back the next week. We started doing tackling drills again at practice, and it was, and it's kind of like 2 years ago, we went down to Ripon, and we were number 1 in the state, and every newspaper loved us, and everything was all Escalon, and they smoked us. And you know what? We walked out of there, and we're like, man, it doesn't change anything. We can still win the TVL. We can still be the number 1 seed in the playoffs, win a blue banner, and we can still go win a state title. That's exactly what we told those guys after Kimball. Hey, what changes? We can still be TVL champs. We can still be the number 1 seed. And, we can still go win a blue banner. So thank you, Kimball. I mean, we appreciate it, I mean, and I think, and I don't want to throw out Jimmy the Greek numbers here, but I think they're going to knock off Oakdale or somebody. I don't know if anyone has what Manteca and Central have, but yeah. Kimball's going to be in that mix.
Well, Manteca, they're going to play that ball. When that game comes, they'll just ball control with Nicholson and Cologne. They're just going to run the ball and try to like what Houston did to you guys, just ball possession. We got that a couple of weeks ago against Bradshaw. I think we didn't see the ball at all in the fourth quarter. I mean, I think it was a minute and a half left in the third quarter, and they just ran that double. I mean, really, like you said, 2-3 yards. I mean, we'd be fourth and 4, and they'd get 4.5, and just move the chains. And so I can see those teams that can run the ball well. Nicholson's different. You and I both know that. I mean, and Cologne in any other program is probably anybody's number one. But Blake Nicholson's just a different kid. So that I think that's where Kimball will run into some problems. I saw it in the spring. I watched them play Houston in the spring, and Houston put it on them pretty good in their own yard. And it was and
Houston that game. I mean, like we said, Houston held onto the ball.
Yep.
They won the turnover battle, and when they had to tackle in space, they tackled in space. And it makes I mean, I love the TVL taking on these teams. Sure. I mean, win or lose. That's the thing. I saw a lot of Houston kids after the game Friday night. I said, you guys didn't lose tonight. In the TVL, you don't lose games. You win games or you learn.
Yeah.
You learn something every Friday night. You learn something about your opponents. And they had the right comment. Coach King even said, we're going to see those guys in the playoffs.
Yeah.
That's the attitude you got to have. We're going to see them again.
For sure.
And I don't want to see them again. I don't want to see Houston again. So, I mean, and then now we're talking, you were saying earlier about Ripon. I got the stats on Ripon Modesto Christian here. Ripon won 56-12, but they're starting to get the ball rolling again. They took that loss up at Sonora, but one of their best players, Jack Manning, I think he got knocked out in like the first series of the game. If I'm not mistaken, they actually load him in the ambulance and stuff. He was out, and that's their special teams ace, defensive back. That's their speed back on offense, So
is he okay?
He's fine. He's back. He's playing again. I think last week he had a punt return for a touchdown, but that gave him a chance to give this Daniel Espinoza kid the rock. And Coach Chris, he told me, he goes, man, that's the highlight player of the week. Daniel Espinoza, 11 carries, 100 yards. He's all, someone's got to step up, and Daniel stepped up.
That's awesome.
It's a beautiful thing, man. Yep. TVL football is starting to get going here. We were talking about this week. You got Houston at Livingston. You got Hillmar at Ripon. Here's another one I love. Riverbank at MC. That's their one. Those teams. That's their one chance to go get a win.
Yeah.
And I hate to shit on them like that, but sorry for the language, but that means something to these guys.
Yeah.
That means something to these kids. And who knows, after this game, the last few years, these programs just fold the program because they can't hang with Hillmar and they can't hang with Ripon. They're not going to hang with Livingston this year. So, I mean, this might be the last game of the season for these two teams.
Yeah.
And it's sad to say that, but I mean, this game means something to them. And, I mean, they're TVL teams. I'm going to give them love. I feel like Riverbank's flipping the page, but, they're walking into a buzzsaw here.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, and we're seeing it across the board. I have some major frustrations running this show, with just coaches not willing to put stats out, to promote their kids. You have so many cancellations, and I'm sure some of them are attributed to COVID, but we are seeing a lot more just not wanting to play type of thing. We don't have the guys or whatever. And,
right.
And
that's not fair, man.
Well, and I don't think it's right. That's not the right message to send to your team. I mean, how are you ever, look, man, I took this program over 4 years ago. This is my 4th year as head coach. We were 0-10 the year before I took it over. Nobody in the area wanted this program, and the rebuild that we've had is attributed to the kids. They bought in, we took in this year we played you guys, we played Bradshaw Christians, who's a perennial state contender. I mean, You have, we played Liberty Ranch and Galt, who are much bigger schools than us. We leave preseason 2-2, but, we've been through getting our ass kicked. I mean, we've been through, being a little bit battle tested. So, and we never back down from anybody. I mean, I sat on the sidelines 5 years ago and watched us get beat over 60-0 to Amador on homecoming night, and I'm a Linden alumni. It broke my heart, and so that's why I've been so, damned if I do, damned if I don't, but I'm going to give you all I got so these kids can get the best experience and opportunity out of this program as anything. And that's why when we play you guys or Houston or, Ripon or whoever it may be, there's just so much respect that I have for the longevity and, the dedication. We go to your guys' yard and it's all purple and gold in the stands. Nobody's wearing a 49er jersey or a Raider jersey. They're wearing Escalon,
right.
Little kids running around in, mock Escalon uniforms, purple shirt, yellow pants. I mean, it's like, that's Americana. I mean, that's what we're supposed to be in, our area. So it's the TVL. I've always been enamored with the TVL as far as the football side is concerned. And like you said, the VOL this year is just different. I think that the VOL can put almost those top 4 teams in the TCAL, and they would do just fine.
Yeah, I think the VOL, and I think the TVL could still have a state champ as well. But if we start beating up on each other come league play here, it'll be tougher road to get there. But I think a team like Manteca, Coach Varnum, man, that's a no-nonsense guy, dude. He's going to lead those guys somewhere. He's going to get that. He's going to take that blue banner. He's going to go take that NorCal. Is he going to go take that state title this year? I don't know.
Yep.
But that program is next level. We used to play Manteca years and years ago, and it was always great battles and great respect between Escalon and Manteca. And I still have friends that coach over there and know some of those guys. And, like you said, they want the best for these kids.
Yep.
They want to if there's a 10-game schedule, they're going to do everything in their power to get those 10 games. And you got to love and respect that. And, I respect that at you, Coach Herrera. I mean, look at, like you said, you almost have to schedule up in order to reassure that you're going to get a game.
Yep.
Because if you go schedule, and I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but you go schedule Bret Hart and then they drop the varsity football program, that doesn't just, hurt those Bret Hart kids. That kills your kids too.
Yep. And it's been tough for the MLL. I mean, that's somebody's got to buy every week in a 16 league. But from what I read this week, I read it on Front Row Preps. They had Bret Hart's got 36 in the JV program, so maybe they put it back together. And I keep thinking, Riverbank, with their area and the money that they have in that area, that program at some point kind of finds its way.
Right.
I mean, they should have the numbers. I mean, they do have the financing. I mean, so they can't be that far off if they found the right guy to lead the program, or maybe they do have the right guy. I'm not, I'm not too familiar with them, but MC was good for, a handful of years. And then all of a sudden they kind of just decided to not care about football much anymore. So, I just think that the TVL, top to bottom, is probably as good a league as anybody. And the VOL this year, has really, revamped. In Sierra's in a down year, but Kimball kind of takes over for what Sierra was. So, I don't know, man.
I mean, you talk TVL football, you got 3 games a week, so there's 6 teams and 1 team's on a bye. So you got 7 teams in the VOL, and I think every team makes the postseason but Modesto Christian and Riverbank.
Yep.
So 5 of the 7 are going to represent in the postseason, and I got to believe all 5 of those teams can at least win their first round game. The competition I've seen in the Sacramento area, some of those schools, Colfax and Center, and some of those schools that are our size, it appears that some of those programs are down. But like we said, we don't know what's going on with some of these schools and the COVID protocols and the tracing, and it's almost insane. There's not really one set of rules, so everybody's trying to do their best. And, in the end, it's really just killing these kids.
Yeah.
And we're like, like we said, we're going to do everything we can to get them 10 games. We're going to keep everyone healthy. If we got to lock down the locker rooms, if we got to take individual cars instead of bus trips, if we got to, whatever we got to do, we're going to do it. And, the community is behind us. Yep. Like you said, this whole town is Escalon football,
Yep. It's an impressive sight, I'll tell you. Well, That's about it for this week, but I'd like to have you on later. And, as we get towards the end of the season, I actually got to get with Coach Santos too. I was supposed to get with him a couple of weeks ago, but like you said, this COVID stuff, man, every day. I text my AD the other day, and I said, it's not Groundhog Day anymore. It's Groundhog Week. You get out of your Friday night game, and Saturday it starts all over again. It's one thing after another, day to day. So,
that's the beauty of football, though, is for those 3 hours when you're out there, life feels kind of normal.
Yeah,
you turn your phone off. There's no breaking updates of a forest fire or some Gabby girl got abducted or all this. Everybody wants to talk about all this crazy stuff, and it's like, nah, man. For 3 hours, that's what I tell the boys. There's nothing better than this. When you get older, you're going to look back and, some of my favorite memories weren't winning games, man. They were at practices.
Yeah.
They were out there busting balls with my friends, and you take pride in that. It's like everybody has good days and bad days in life. But, the beautiful thing about football is on your bad days, man, you still get to go out there for a few hours and be with the boys. And, it's just a different thing. And that's why I encourage kids to become a part of football, basketball, something, it gets you away from the madness that's going on in this world, and it just gives you a little bit of normal in your life.
Yes, sir. Well, hey,
right on, Coach.
Hey,
I wish you nothing but health and success this season. And you tell Coach Santos I'll see him in 2 Fridays, my man. He's coming to Escalon here in 2 weeks. So
maybe we'll try to do a three-way call that week, and just get you guys on a little bit of conversation going before that game. We'll see how that rolls.
Give us the offensive game plan, Coach.
Yeah. All right. You have a good weekend.
Right on, brother. Hey, you have a great day, great week. And everybody, all the listeners out there, we appreciate you listening.
All right. Thank you much.